The sharp sting of gravel bit into Malik's palms as he hit the ground. His few belongings lay scattered across the cold pavement, kicked aside like trash. A boot pressed down near his hand, and when he looked up, the security guard towered over him with a smirk. "Get lost," the guard muttered, eyes full of contempt. Malik's chest tightened. He had once commanded boardrooms, signed multimillion-dollar deals, and shaken hands with the powerful. Now, he was treated like dirt beneath a man's boot. But as he clenched his fists, he knew something Rick didn't. Tables always turn. Rick scoffed and walked away, convinced he had put a worthless man in his place. Inside the restaurant, well-dressed patrons avoided Malik's gaze, pretending not to notice. Shame burned in his chest, but he forced himself to his feet. He had been through worse. He wasn't done yet. The next evening, Rick lounged in his chair, flipping through television channels, a beer in hand. The news anchor's voice barely registered until a familiar face appeared on the screen. The beer can slip from his fingers as shock froze him in place. Malik Thompson stood behind a podium, wearing a crisp suit, addressing an audience of influential figures. Applause filled the room as the news anchor's voice carried over the broadcast. Meet Malik Thompson, a former Wall Street executive who lost everything but never lost his spirit. After years of hardship, he has now launched a foundation to help struggling individuals get back on their feet. Rick's pulse pounded in his ears. His mind reeled as the truth crashed over him. The man he had humiliated wasn't just another homeless nobody. He was somebody. And now, the whole world was watching him rise again. Malik's voice rang through the television speakers, each word hitting Rick like a hammer. "I know what it feels like to be looked down on, to be dismissed as nothing. But never underestimate a person's worth, because tables always turn." The audience erupted in applause, but Rick barely heard it. His stomach churned as the realization set in. He had spat on a man who now stood above him, and something told him this wasn't over yet. Rick sat frozen, his breath shallow as the television screen glowed in the dimly lit room. The weight of his own actions pressed down on him like a boulder. He had humiliated this man without a second thought. Now, Malik Thompson was standing in front of the world, a living testament to resilience. And Rick? He was nothing more than a nameless, faceless bully in the grand scheme of things. But what if Malik remembered him? The thought sent a shiver down Rick's spine. His fingers twitched as he reached for the remote, turning up the volume. He needed to hear every word. Malik continued speaking, his voice calm but powerful. "There were days I thought I wouldn't make it. Days I begged for help, only to be ignored. I know how it feels to be invisible. But I also know that strength isn't just about power. It's about perseverance. And now, I'm here to make sure no one else has to suffer in silence." The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Cameras flashed as reporters scribbled notes. This wasn't just a speech. This was a moment in history. Malik Thompson wasn't just reclaiming his life. He was changing lives. Rick wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans, his stomach in knots. He tried to convince himself it didn't matter. Malik was probably too busy with his new mission to even think about him, right? Then Malik's eyes met the camera, piercing through the screen. And for a split second, Rick felt exposed, as if Malik could see him, sitting in his dark apartment, drenched in guilt. Rick shook his head, cursing under his breath. "Get together," he muttered. It was just a coincidence. But then Malik's next words made his blood run cold. "I've been hurt, humiliated, and left for dead. But I never forgot the faces of those who stepped on me when I was down." Rick's breath hitched. Malik's lips curled into a knowing smile. "And I have a message to them. I remember everything." Rick's heart pounded in his chest. He fumbled for the remote, shutting off the TV. Silence filled the room, but it did nothing to quiet the storm raging inside him. Malik remembered. And if he remembered, what did that mean for him? The next few days were a blur. Rick couldn't shake the anxiety clawing at him. At work, every time he glanced at the front doors of the restaurant, he half expected Malik to walk in, flanked by reporters, ready to expose him. Every time his phone buzzed, his stomach twisted, fearing it was a viral video with his face plastered all over it. Paranoia gnawed at him. The security job once a position control, now felt like a prison. He started noticing how customers looked at him, how his co-workers whispered in hushed tones. Was it all in his head? Or did people know? One night, as Rick locked up the restaurant, he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, deliberate. He turned sharply, his pulse spiking. A man stood a few feet away, dressed in a sleek black suit. He wasn't Malik, but something about him felt off. "Rick Dawson?" the man asked, his tone neutral. Rick swallowed hard. "Who's asking?" The man pulled a small envelope from his pocket and extended it. "Mr. Thompson would like to see you." Rick's throat went dry. He stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. "Why?" The man's expression didn't change. "You'll find out soon enough." Rick hesitated before taking the envelope. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a simple, handwritten note. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at the Grand Hotel. Suite 1802. Don't be late." Rick's pulse pounded in his ears. His mind raced with possibilities. Was this revenge? A public humiliation? A trap? He looked up, ready to demand answers, but the man was already gone. Only the night air remained, thick with tension. Rick clutched the note, his knuckles turning white. Tomorrow, he would come face to face with Malik Thompson, and he had no idea what awaited him. Rick barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, Malik's words echoed in his head. "I remember everything." He tossed and turned, his mind racing with questions. What did Malik want? Revenge? Public humiliation? A lawsuit? By morning, Rick felt like a man walking to his execution. He took extra time getting ready, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His usual confident smirk was gone, replaced by something he hadn't seen in years: fear. The Grand Hotel stood tall and imposing in the city skyline. Rick swallowed hard as he entered the lavish lobby, the scent of expensive cologne and polish would filling his nostrils. He stuck out like a sore thumb in his work jacket, his presence out of place among the wealthy patrons. The receptionist gave him a knowing look before directing him to the elevator. Suite 1802. The number haunted him with every floor that passed. When the doors opened, a sleek hallway stretched before him, silent and unnerving. He hesitated before knocking on the door. It swung open almost immediately. A man in a tailored suit stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. Rick's heartbeat thundered as he stepped into the suite. The floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in golden sunlight, overlooking the city skyline. And there, standing by the window, hands in his pockets, was Malik Thompson. He turned slowly, his gaze unreadable. He wasn't the broken man Rick had humiliated days ago. He was in control now. "Sit," Malik said, motioning to a leather chair. Rick hesitated before lowering himself into it. His fingers clenched against his knees. "Look, man, Malik held up a hand, silencing him. "Do you know why you're here?" Rick licked his lips. I assume it's about what happened the other night. At the restaurant." Malik nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's part of it, but it's bigger than that. You represent something much larger, Rick. The kind of person who looks at someone struggling and assumes they're worthless." Rick bristled but bit his tongue. Malik leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You humiliated me. And the sad part? You didn't even think twice about it." Rick dropped his gaze. "I was just doing my job." Malik's chuckle was hollow. "Was that your job? Kicking a man when he's already down." Silence stretched between them. Rick shifted uncomfortably. "I should ruin you," Malik continued. "I have enough influence now to make sure you never work security again. One call, and your name will be blacklisted in this entire city." Rick's stomach dropped. His security job wasn't glamorous, but it was all he had. If Malik destroyed his reputation, he had nothing. Malik exhaled sharply and stood up. "But I'm not going to do that." Rick's head snapped up. "You're not." Malik shook his head. "Because if I did, I'd be no better than you. And I refuse to be like the people who once tried to break me." Relief washed over Rick, but it was short-lived. "But," Malik continued, pacing the room, "you don't walk away from this without consequences." Rick tensed. What does that mean? Malik turned back to him, his eyes sharp. It means you're going to work for me. Rick blinked. Work for you? You think you know what struggling looks like? You have no idea. Malik crossed his arms. So, you're going to learn. You're going to work at my foundation. Hands-on. Face-to-face with the very people you look down on. And you're going to do it without pay. Rick's jaw tightened. You can't be serious. Malik smirked. Oh, I am. You have two choices. Take my offer or lose everything. Rick's mind raced. He could walk out, pretend this never happened. But Malik wasn't bluffing. If he refused, his career was over. He had no backup plan, no savings. He was trapped. With a heavy sigh, Rick muttered, Fine. Malik smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good. Your shift starts tomorrow. 5 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Rick clenched his fists as he stood up. He had no idea what he was walking into, but one thing was certain. Malik Thompson was far from finished with him. And something told him this was just the beginning. Rick's alarm blared at 4 a.m., jarring him awake from a restless sleep. His body protested as he dragged himself out of bed, the weight of what lay ahead sinking in. He had never volunteered a day in his life, let alone been forced to work for free. But this wasn't just any job. This was Malik's world now, and Rick had no choice but to step into it. By the time he arrived at the foundation, the sun was barely peeking over the horizon. The building was a stark contrast to the luxury of the Grand Hotel. It was simple, unassuming, yet bustling with life even at this early hour. Volunteers moved with purpose, handing out supplies, preparing meals, and speaking with the people who relied on this place for survival. Malik was already there, dressed down in jeans and a sweatshirt, blending seamlessly into the crowd. He spotted Rick immediately and walked over, arms crossed. Glad to see you made it. Rick gritted his teeth. Did I have a choice? Malik smirked. No, you didn't. But let's see if you can make it through the day. He gestured toward an older woman stacking boxes. Go help Miss Diane with the food distribution. And try not to mess it up. Rick exhaled sharply and walked over. The moment he reached for a box, Miss Diane eyed him suspiciously. You knew? Yeah, Rick muttered. Something like that. She didn't press him for details, just handed him a list of names. Good. These folks have been waiting all night. Make sure they get their meals. Rick scanned the long line of people. Men, women, children. Some barely dressed with cold, their faces etched with exhaustion. His stomach twisted. He had spent years throwing people like this out of restaurants, dismissing them as a nuisance. Now he was serving them. One by one, he handed out meals, his fingers stiff in the morning air. Some thanked him. Others barely made eye contact. But one man stopped, staring at him with recognition. Rick's blood ran cold. It was the same homeless man he had thrown out just a few weeks ago. The one he had shoved out the door like garbage. The man's lip curled in amusement. Funny seeing you here. Rick forced a swallow. Yeah. The man chuckled, shaking his head. Life's funny that way. Rick quickly handed him a meal and looked away, his pulse hammering. How many more people here have been on the receiving end of his cruelty? How many faces had he ignored, insulted, dismissed? Hours passed, but the weight in Rick's chest only grew heavier. By the time the sun reached its peak, his back ached, and his hands were raw from lifting boxes. Yet, the volunteers around him never stopped, never slowed. They moved with a sense of purpose Rick had never known. As the last of the meals were distributed, Malik approached, his expression unreadable. Not as easy as standing at a restaurant door, huh? Rick wiped sweat from his forehead. Not even close. Malik studied him for a moment. Come with me. Rick followed him into a smaller room where a group of people sat in a circle, some in ragged clothes, others in work uniforms. A woman in her 40s spoke, her voice trembling. I lost my job a year ago. One missed paycheck turned into 2, then 3. Suddenly, I couldn't pay rent. I never thought I'd be here. Another man, younger than Rick, added, People don't see you anymore when you're homeless. They look through you like you don't exist. Rick shifted uncomfortably in his seat, their words hitting harder than he expected. Malik leaned back in his chair. Rick, Why don't you tell them why you're here? Rick's mouth went dry. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. He cleared his throat. I made mistakes, treated people badly, and now I guess I'm seeing things from the other side. Malik nodded. And what do you see? Rick hesitated before answering, the words tasting unfamiliar. I see people, not problems. A murmur of approval spread to the room, but Malik wasn't done. Good. Now, let's see if you're willing to do more than just see them. We have an outreach mission tomorrow. You in? Rick's got twisted. Spending one day here was one thing, but continuing this? He wanted to say no, walk away, but deep down he knew he couldn't. Yeah, he said finally, I'm in. Malik's smirk returned, but this time it carried something different. Respect. Rick left the foundation that evening feeling different, unsettled. For the first time in years, he wasn't just existing. He was feeling something real. But just as he stepped out onto the street, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Hello? A deep voice on the other end sent a chill down his spine. You don't belong there, Rick. And if you know what's good for you, you'll walk away before it's too late. The line went dead. Rick's breath hitched. His past wasn't ready to let him go. To be continued. What do you think will happen next? Who do you think called Rick, and what are they warning him about? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss part 2.